A quick message before we start the episode. Since we recorded these episodes, Marco Jansen left Braskem, so we cannot say that these are the views of Braskem any longer. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
You're listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hi, my name is Barbara Mendes-Jorge, and I'm a sustainability communications expert based in Brussels, Belgium. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Let's Talk Sustainable Business, a series brought to you by the Conference Board. This is the second instalment of our two-part episode with Marco Jansen, Business Director of Biopolymers in Europe, the Middle East and Africa, as well as Advocacy and Sustainability Director of Europe and Asia at Braskem. If you haven't listened to part one yet, please do go back into our catalogue to listen to it first. Welcome back, Marco.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Great to have you. So in part one, we introduced you to our listeners, as well as to Braskem's bio-based product portfolio, especially your bio-based PE. In part two, I'd love to talk to you in a bit more depth about your collaborations, your future plans, and more, I'm going to say existentially, philosophically, the role you believe that plastics can play in creating a sustainable future. So some of Braskem's customers are really well-known brands, such as Allbirds, Tetra Pak, and even the Olympics. So I was wondering if you could provide our listeners with some of the examples of your customers and how you collaborated to make products from bio-based PE.
It's a great question, Barbara. I mean, we've been now over 10 years marketing these materials, and since then we've worked with hundreds of different brands. And I think there's not many brands that don't use our material either through us or through our clients. So not of course in all of the brands that they carry, but I think all of the big brand owners that you know of, they use our material. And specifically the ones that you referred to. I mean, a really nice one, of course, is the Olympic hockey fields. We work already for several years since the Tokyo Olympics or before the Tokyo Olympics with a company in Germany called Polytan of Polytex, who produce hockey fields. And as you may know, the Tokyo Olympic wanted to be the first carbon neutral Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of the ways to contribute to that. And since then, these sustainable hockey fields have taken a huge, I would say, jump into also the non, let's say, Olympic applications. So a lot of clubs are now using these materials. And since I think it's last year or maybe the year before, they are expanding that to football fields also that carry artificial turf. So this is one of these, let's say, more durable applications where plastics are used that can hold the CO2 also for a very long time, right? So they're not the let's say disposable materials that you use once and then hopefully recycle again. But these are these fields that go tens of years before they are recycled. So I think this is one of these examples, but there's many more. A lot still goes into packaging, especially food packaging or contact sensitive, let's say, packaging where recycling is very difficult. So I think bio-based plastics they let's say fill the gap in the areas where recycled plastics are more difficult to use. But there's so many applications. I don't even know where to start, to be honest.
Well, I guess Allbirds, it was on shoes, right? If I remember
That's
correctly.
true, yeah. But they actually they made the brand Sweet Foam. Although I'm pretty sure the foam is not sweet, but they refer to the fact that
Don't
sugar
try and
is
taste
being
it, people.
used. Yeah, they refer to the fact that sugar was or sugar juice at least is being used in order to make those soles. So actually, we developed that together with them. So it was a true partnership between Allbirds and Braskem to develop that. And it's still one of our main clients for this specific applications. But since then, it's been rolled out to many other clients. I think they have a partnership, if I'm not mistaken, with Adidas to develop these similar solutions together. And there's many other brands that are doing the same. Veja, for instance, is a brand that most people know in Europe and also outside of Europe that are also using our material in their shoe soles. So again, this is something that's, launched not that many years ago, but since then has been grown very rapidly.
You know, as listeners, you might not even realize how prominent Braskem packaging. Well, Braskem's plastic is used in packaging. Full disclosure, I used to work with Braskem when I worked for a communications agency, and so I'm very aware of their "I'm Green" logo. And every now and again, I will be food shopping or cosmetics shopping, and I will see something that has "I'm Green." The last time was a few days ago, Marco. I went to buy some frozen peas from a an organic supermarket, and there was your logo. So it's really quite, now that you know what it looks like, keep an eye out for it. It is in more places than you think. Um, so as you mentioned, your customer base is very widespread, and most of the big brands are using your material. But are there any kind of ideal customers that you're on the lookout for, or any sustainability oriented partnerships that you'd like Braskem to have in future?
Well, I think, I mean, we have this 1 million ton goal for biopolymers, which is, to be honest, still a fraction of the plastics produced globally, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's representing a fair share of our production, but still, if you look across the board, that's still relatively small. We have the same ambition with recycled materials, so we want to produce 1 million tons of plastic with recycled content at the same time. And we believe that initially it's probably, well, first of all, it's better to use as little as possible of whatever it is, right? Whether that's plastic, paper, metal, glass, whatever. I mean, if you can avoid it, don't use it. If you do, then let's make sure that either you reuse it, and if that's not possible, make sure it's recycled. And so we try to focus initially on, okay, where can we use recycled material? Where can our clients use recycled material? When that is not possible or more challenging, then we think bio-based plastics play a key role. So if you see the main applications where these are used, as I mentioned, things that are context sensitive, where, let's say, hygiene products is something where recycled plastics are not or hardly used. Toys, for instance,
Mhm.
cosmetics. Um, and then you have applications where you need a certain performance that recycled materials cannot give. So I think all of these applications, this is where we think bioplastics make a lot of sense. And also, I think if your primary goal is to reduce your carbon footprint of your scope 3 emissions, then bioplastics play a more significant role than recycled plastics, for instance. So I think that those are the clients that we work with, that we partner with.
It's good that you brought up recycling and that you mentioned your recycling goals as well. So, are you working, for example, with startups focused on plastics recycling, or is your R&D department focusing more in that area precisely because we know that we need to speed up plastics recycling massively in the next decade or so?
So we're both investing into recycling companies. So
Hmm.
we bought one recently in the Netherlands that's actually converting hard to recycle waste into final products.
Hmm.
So actually we skipped the step of making a pellet and then converting it into a final product. We actually
Interesting.
convert this to recycle plastic waste directly into the final product. Um, so this is one example. We have, let's say, partnerships looking at chemical recycling, and for the time being, that's pyrolysis, so pie oil, what is that's called. So we are looking at investments in Brazil, for instance, but also recently we announced a partnership with Shell to use their raw materials, well, the raw materials that we use based on the plastic waste that they use to produce their feedstocks. Um, and then within our R&D, I think our development is more on, let's say, game-changing technologies, right? Not necessarily the existing recycling technologies, but technologies that can really be game-changing, that help on scalability, for instance, or being more efficient in material use, energy use, things like that.
And for those companies, are you focusing mostly in Brazil, in the Netherlands where you're based, or kind of anywhere worldwide? If the technology is good, you'll go there.
Well, I think mainly in the Americas and Europe.
Hmm.
Uh, Hopefully soon we'll have a footprint in Asia, but currently we only have commercial offices there. But with the partnership with SC Chemicals, where hopefully we will build our next biopolymers plant. We should have a footprint in Asia also. So maybe then when we have more people there, we can also explore opportunities there. But I would say our main activities are now in the Americas and Europe.
Okay, thank you. So, moving away a little bit from your role at Braskem, I wanted to ask you about being a board member at the Trade Association Plastics Europe, which you already briefly mentioned in the last episode. So, I wanted to ask, what does your role specifically entail there, and what sustainability issues is Plastics Europe mostly focused on?
Yeah, so I'm the vice chair of the what they call Strategic Committee Climate and Production in Brussels, as well as a board member of Plastics Europe in the Netherlands. And I think what we are focused on mainly is this transition from being a fossil linear industry to become a carbon neutral circular one. So I was part of the group that helped develop the roadmap that was announced, I think was late last year, in which the industry has committed to this transition to a circular and carbon neutral one by 2050, which means adopting mechanical recycling solutions, chemical recycling solutions, bio-based solutions, as well as carbon capture and utilization, which is still something that's, let's say, is in development in most places. But one of the things that you will see, and this is also what the industry is now, let's say, committing to, is that you need all of these solutions. There's not one of them that's going to um, be the silver bullet to all of the solution, all of the challenge that we have. So we need all of them, and then I think my role is, other than representing the company there, of course, is to try to help the industry together with the industry association move in the right direction to achieve those goals. And then what you try to do is also with policymakers to see how together we can develop plans to ensure that there's the right, let's say, environment for our companies in the industry, but actually for the whole value chain, in order to make sure that more recycled material can be used, more bio-based materials can be used, and to ensure that sustainability criteria are being respected and also actually defined, because this is still some of these steps that need to be taken.
I think it's very good and very common sense what you say about, you need all hands on deck, you need all the technologies because yes, I think sometimes people are too focused on what one technology can't or can do to reduce carbon emissions and everything else relating to sustainability. And that kind of leads on nicely to my next question because I've worked in the plastics sector also for a number of years. The consultancy that I used to work for, Sustainability Consult, we had clients like you making bio-based plastics. We also worked with people making bio-based chemicals. And I found it very interesting in the last decade how the reputation of plastics completely changed. I felt that no one had an opinion on plastics before about 2014, and then suddenly people were coming up to me asking me if I knew about the fossil impact and issues such as marine pollution and things like that. And yeah, it's interesting to see how plastics as a material, especially in kind of packaging, has really been, I think, the focus of a lot of people's imagination in a way that it wasn't previously. So I'd be really interested to hear in what would you say to the critics of plastics who feel that that material doesn't have a place in a truly circular economy?
Well, I think first of all, I think the concerns are relevant, and I think also reasonable, to be quite honest, because I think especially the way plastic waste, well, waste in general, but plastic waste is treated, it was not sustainable, and in some cases it still is not sustainable,
Mhm.
right? And plastics, they have an advantage, which is at the same time the disadvantage. It's extremely durable, right? So it's a material that lasts very, very long, which is great if you use it. But it's terrible if it ends up in an environment because it's there and it's there for a long time. So I think we need to make sure, first of all, that we handle our waste much better. I think people that say that there's no role for plastics, yeah, I think people may underestimate the impact that plastics has, the positive impacts that plastic have. I mean, to be honest, I don't think we could preserve the food that we need globally without packaging, of which plastics is an important part. And then if you look at packaging specifically, which is probably the one that's under most pressure because this is normally what you see in the environment. Plastics, I think at least 9 out of 10 times always comes on top if you look at sustainability aspects, especially if you look at the carbon footprint of um, of the packaging itself, but also the way food, for instance, is being preserved, and the let's say the CO2 that is avoided by the loss of food, but also look at hygiene, look at medical applications. And I really understand, honestly, I really understand the concerns that people have, because if I go to my waste bin, and here in the Netherlands we have, at least I have four, and the biggest one is the plastics one. Of course, there's a lot of
Yes.
air inside, but it's sometimes confronting to see how much waste you actually generate. Luckily, a lot of it's now being recycled, and I think we need to focus more and more to make sure that we design it in the right way, that it is recyclable. But I believe there's a lot of value in using plastics as long as we use it sensibly, and especially when we discard it, that we make sure that we recycle it and that it definitely doesn't end up in the environment. But at the same time, we can make sure that we make it more sustainably, right? By using different types of material like bio-based materials, but also looking at the energy sources that we use to see if we can use more efficient sources, but also more sustainable sources.
As someone who's worked in sustainability for 14 years now, the answer is never straightforward. As you say, I've seen the studies that show that from a carbon perspective, often plastics can be more efficient than paper or glass because despite kind of high recycling rates, they're materials that are heavier, and for transportation, the carbon intensity is higher. I guess people are thinking, as you mentioned, of pollution and things like microplastics getting in the environment. I really feel like we're only really at kind of the beginning of understanding and being able to deal with that. But I think it's good that you're recognizing that that is an issue and that you're trying to come together as an industry to solve it. So maybe for my final question, can I ask you about what you feel the role of companies like Braskem and materials like plastics should play in a low carbon future?
I think first of all, companies like ours, we need to show that we're walking the talk. Right? I think that is critical, because I think the industry is suffering from image and reputation challenge, let's say.
Check out our
And
greenwashing episodes in the previous season, everyone.
yeah, no, but
Yeah.
it's true, right? I think
Mhm.
the only way to build that credibility again as a company and an industry is to actually walk the talk. So to do what you say and to make sure that this transition that we're all talking about is happening. Right? Because it's easy to say we all want to move to a carbon neutral circular economy, but the only way that people will believe that's happening is to see that it's actually happening, that money is being invested, and that solutions are being brought to the market. So I think that is, for me, a critical part of the role that we have to play. The only, I mean, I always say that my goal is that people in a few years from now, they only recognize plastics for the value that it has and not for the challenge. Okay, I know that's very ambitious, and I think that maybe too ambitious, because I think there will always be people that are critical, and actually you need people critical because you need actually these critical questions to make sure that you continue to innovate and to continue to develop. Um, but I really hope that we can show that we're not only saying that we want to do this, but that as an industry and as a company for sure, but as an industry as a whole, that we're moving in the right direction. And it will take time. It will not be from one day to the other. But I think there's a genuine interest from the majority of the industry to do that. And again, the only way to show that and to build that credibility again is by showing examples of what we're doing.
I very much agree with walking the talk, and it's not only your company, but all companies need to do that in the sustainability sphere. So, thank you very much, Marco, for joining me today for part two. And thanks to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to this podcast series and explore the entire catalogue of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website at tcb.org/podcasts. See you next time.
That was Let's Talk Sustainability.